Coming up, we have the Millionaire tax that's been recently passed, and how does that affect the Kraken? Also, big news about the Sonics. It looks like they are getting even closer to coming back, and what does that mean for Jason Bottrell as they head into their offseason strategy? And we have part 2 of our great podcast with Ladies Talking Leafs.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm Zaiem Beg, and I'm with Davy Jones Locker Room, where we do print coverage of the Seattle Torrent and the Seattle Kraken. And welcome to Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Glenn is unavailable today, so we are going to be doing this show solo. Didn't have a game yesterday, so I wanted to catch up on a couple of really big pieces of news. The first is that the Millionaire tax looks like it's going to be a thing in Washington, assuming it survives court challenges. There's some question about its constitutionality, but as it stands right now, the Millionaire tax does appear to be enacted or will be enacted soon. And so what that is, establishes a new tax, and it is a 9.9% flat tax on Washington taxable income that exceeds a $1 million annual threshold. And so it's a millionaire tax. And it is not taxing you at that rate for all of the million. It's just anything you make above $1 million. So if you make $950,000 and then you get a bump to $1,050,000, it's not like the whole thing is now subject to the 9.9% tax. It's just that extra $50,000 that is subject to that tax. This is causing some consternation, particularly among rich people. As you might imagine, Howard Schultz, the former Starbucks CEO, the former Sonics owner, who then sold the Sonics to the Oklahoma City group, which is one of the reasons why Oklahoma City has an NBA team and Seattle does not have an NBA team. Howard Schultz is one of the key villains in this one. Well, you know what? He was like, it's a millionaire tax and I'm mad. And so I'm going to leave, and I'm leaving. I'm going to go to Miami, and Starbucks headquarters might leave as well. And, I don't think there's a lot of love for Starbucks or Howard Schultz in Seattle. We consume Starbucks, but I don't think there's a lot of fondness for that company. And there's been a good sense of, good riddance. But what does this mean for the Kraken? Well, first of all, the obvious thing is that it affects virtually every player in the NHL if they're making over $1 million a year, which is most of them. The second is that Seattle is one of the few teams that did not have a state income tax. And this lack of state income tax should be a big advantage because the NHL has a salary cap. So you can't offer more money in absolute dollars to a player that another team could in the aggregate. I mean, you could offer more in one contract, but overall, you're spending the same amount of money. Now, the amount that the players are taxed varies from state to state. Another thing that is important is that when a player plays a game in whatever state they play in California, they pay a California state tax for that game. If they pay in Columbus, they pay the Ohio state tax for that game. Now, one thing that's important to note is that the signing bonus is taxed at the state rate where the player plays their home games. Meaning that if you live in a no state income tax state, it behooves those teams, if they have the cash flow, to front load those contracts with as much signing bonus money as possible. That way, the player receives more money overall because they're paying less in taxes, because their base salary is now a small portion of the contract, and that's the part that gets taxed wherever they go. And they get their money up front, and they get it right away so they can spend it. And this is what some of the teams have done. These are the no state tax teams. There are 6 of them: the Florida Panthers, the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Golden Knights, the Stars, the Predators, and the Kraken. As you can see for our video listeners, that Florida, they spend so much money on signing bonuses and they give relatively little in base salary. 420 million in bonus and 101 million in salary. Vegas 50% and Tampa Bay about 50% is in signing bonus salary. Dallas 23%, Nashville 18%. I don't know what their cash flow issue is, and that may have been a concern. And then we have Seattle at 9%. That's it. They had this huge advantage that is something that players bring up in discussions. It's a recruiting advantage. Hey, you don't have to pay state income tax. You get to get just that much more money for free. And the Kraken, for whatever reason, have chosen not to do that. Is it because they're cash poor? No. The Kraken organization has never indicated anything other than a willingness to spend money wherever necessary. They spend for the top-notch facilities, for the top-notch amenities. They will spend to the cap if they think that that's necessary. The only reason why they're not spending to the cap right now is because it's a strategic reason. There's no player who's worth spending all that money on to get to the cap. But the Kraken, let's be really, really clear that they are not a cheap organization. And I don't think this is a function of, well, we would like to give out more signing bonus money, but we don't have the cash reserves. What the reason is, I don't know. I don't know if this is a strategic thing, if they were not aware, but regardless, that advantage now is gone. So good news and bad news situation. Good news is the advantage that was there, Seattle wasn't taking advantage of it anyway. So you're not losing anything. The bad news is it's now creating a tax the other way. And now players are getting taxed at a higher rate in Seattle if they make over $1 million, higher rate being more than zero, in this case, 9.9%. Kraken contract management has not been exemplary, to say the least. This is according to Donald Sisson of The Athletic, but he looked at the average discount on contracts over the last 5 years. This was last offseason. And at the top, you see Florida and Vegas and Carolina and Colorado. It's really well-run organizations that have excellent salary management and great contract management. And then at the very, very bottom, you have Seattle getting, on average, $1.3 million more per contract over the last 5 years. This is a huge reason why the Kraken roster is where it is. It's not that they have a bunch of bad players. There's some good and decent players on the Kraken, but a lot of them are making more money than what their market value would be. And it has hampered this team's flexibility. It's hampered this team's image. Now Seattle is not considered a valuable destination the way it might have been after the playoff year when players were talking about, oh, wow, Seattle's a great city and they got great facilities and they had this great playoff run and they're poised for great things. Facilities are so great. Ownership is so great. The winning isn't there. And that's ultimately the thing that players care about. One thing that people have been making a big deal about with the millionaire tax is that now it is going to really crush the demand for players, and they won't want to play here at all. And I wanted to push back a little bit on that. California has some of the highest state tax rates in the country. I think the Kraken or the millionaires in Seattle or in Washington will end up paying a little higher tax rate overall than in California, but California has very high state tax rates and they have no issue. They've never had an issue attracting talent. You might say some of that is offset with endorsements and other sources of income. Fair enough. But I think that there has been this catastrophizing over the millionaire tax that it's going to absolutely destroy Seattle's ability to recruit free agent talent or to maintain or retain the talent that they do develop. And first of all, it's very early. Second of all, this might get thrown out for being unconstitutional. And third of all, I think that it's really not that different than other states around the league. Yeah, it would be nice to have that advantage, and it's unfortunate they don't. It's also unfortunate the Kraken never really leveraged that advantage, but it is what it is. So it's an important consideration for sure. And I would say I would like to see how the Kraken adjust their signing bonus management based on how this law was changed, but it doesn't look like the state income tax laws were really a strong consideration when the Kraken were handing out contracts historically. And also, just one thing to underscore, you have a state income tax advantage and you're still overpaying by $1.3 million per contract. Not okay. This is just not okay. I like the Kraken's draft management. I like a lot of their assets management, but I think their contract management has been pretty poor and on a lot of different levels. And it's the primary reason I think the Kraken are in the mess that they are now, because they have a middling team that has a bunch of players who are making a little too much money or a lot too much money in some cases. And it's created this mediocre team that a lot of people just don't want to go to. And Seattle has to figure out how to get out of that, because they're not going to get a top 2 draft pick. They're not going to get that generational Macklin Celebrini or Connor Bedard to turn the franchise around. And as it stands, they're going to have to overpay to get free agents to come here, which is a long-term, very difficult strategy to maintain if you want to be a Stanley Cup contender. We have more news around the league, around the state, around the city, and that is that the Supersonics do seem to be on their way coming back. We'll talk about that news that came from yesterday. And what does that mean? Not just long term for the Sonics, but also really I'm focused on the short term and what Jason Bottrell is planning on doing this offseason now that we have this news. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open when the pressure's on and you need the right hire. This is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for, skills, experience, and location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. Here's a stat that says it all. In the time I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Join the Everydayer Club now with code MARCH and get your first month free. If you sign up before the NCAA tournament tips off this Thursday, you can compete in our men's and women's bracket pools on Discord. The winner in each will get $100 in Locked On merch, while the rest of us can commiserate in the members-only chats as our brackets blow up. And as a member of the club, you get an ad-free version of the show. Again, it's all free for a month with code MARCH at lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer or click the link in the show notes. Yesterday, we got news from NBA insider Shams Charania from ESPN, who says the NBA will hold a vote at the Board of Governors meetings at March 24th, 25th to explore adding expansion teams exclusively in Las Vegas and Seattle, with the two franchises targeted for the 2028-29 season, sources tell ESPN. What does this mean? Well, first of all, the Sonics, this is a really big point. I know it sounds maybe a little non-committal, like, oh, they're going to hold a vote to explore expansion. This is the second to last step before the NBA says we're ready to put a team in an NBA team in Seattle. You'll note that the Board of Governors, they're not voting on other cities. It's just Vegas and Seattle. Those are the options. They will play at Climate Pledge Arena if awarded, and the ownership group will be the same ownership group as the Seattle Kraken. So you've got a lot of corporate synergy if that's the sort of thing you want to do. And so there is some internal pressure, but it's all internal, right? We have already seen that Jason Bottrell has been trying to go big game hunting. They tried to trade for Artemi Panarin and offer him a gigantic contract, a well above market contract. And he said no, and he took less money and went to Los Angeles. They have been trying to get Robert Thomas or Jordan Kyrou from the Blues reportedly, and have fallen through on that. Who knows what other players they've tried to kick the tires on, and the other players said, no thanks. Maybe they made a call and said, hey, what would it take to get Connor McDavid or Nathan McKinnon? I don't know. And then maybe most likely they got laughed in their face, because most teams are going to laugh in your face if you have a Connor McDavid or Nathan McKinnon, and they call and they say, hey, I want to trade for you. But what the Kraken want to do is they want to have a transcendent star. Jordan Eberle is a good player, but he's not a transcendent star. I don't think he's even in the top 100 in scoring right now in the NHL, and he's the team's leading scorer. I know that the organization wanted to develop elite talent, Shane Wright and Matty Beniers and Berkeley Catton, and they haven't turned into the generational franchise cornerstones that we hoped. It's really early on Berkeley Catton, so I don't want to say that, he's not going to be that guy. But I think it's safe to say that Matty Beniers, after his Calder rookie season, winning the Rookie of the Year award, that we thought he was going to be one of the next great stars in the NHL, and it just hasn't been the case. Shane Wright, when he was drafted 4th overall, when everyone thought he was going to go 1st overall, felt like manna from heaven, and that this was just a gigantic gift. And he's a good player, but he has not developed into the kind of franchise cornerstone that we hoped. When it was Beniers and Wright, we thought it was going to be Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane, or some, that kind of core. Not true. So now the Kraken can't really afford to be an irrelevant team in their minds, it seems. They've dropped season ticket prices 2 years in a row, which can't ever feel good if you're on the business side. Club prices dropped 30% in some cases, talking to season ticket holders. There's been a shift in strategy over the short history of this franchise. Initially, they were in a safe, conservative mode. They had a strategy of asset accumulation, and they're focusing on mid-round picks and depths. And now they're looking at aggressively getting star players with terms past 2026. So not just a rental, and not that there are really any great rentals available. Although Bobby McMann's a pretty great rental, it seems, but he didn't even cost a 1st-round pick. Player development. Well, initially, we're going to leave Matty in college, and we're going to be slow with his development. And now it seems like we're just putting guys in there, medium veterans, 4th-line veterans, to right the ship. And then at the trade deadline, they were holding pat with the expiring contracts or being a soft seller. But now they're looking for blockbuster deals, and they're looking for big moves. I don't think this is necessarily a wrong shift in strategy, but it is a very market shift in strategy. And we heard from a Kraken employee inside the organization that the Sonics return does put pressure on the team. The organization, this Kraken Sonics organization, really wants to achieve 3 primary objectives, right? The first is the Kraken want to institutionalize their brand with a competitive on-ice product. And so now you've gone from we're a new team and we're interesting and we're novel because we're a new team, and development of star players feels more like a luxury, and now it seems like it's more of a necessity. The second is more of a business side thing, but they would be shifting to an umbrella model where you oversee both the Kraken and the Sonics, and that includes things like building a media ecosystem and how are you going to stream your games over the air, and what happens when there's a Kraken game the same time as a Sonics game, and are they just going to be on separate broadcasts on Amazon Prime? Some of that stuff has to get figured out, but it's something that they need to care about, and it's something that if the Sonics get here, they will be looking at what are the media options and streaming options available to those fans, because when the Kraken started, they were on Root Network, and that was at the very end of the life cycle of regional sports networks, and the Root paid the Kraken far too much money, so they had to take the deal. But then Root was really bad for acquisition because it was so hard to access, and now they don't even exist anymore. So the move to Amazon Prime and Kraken Hockey Network and Tegna, who is the Locked On Podcast Network parent company, by the way, for full disclosure, has made the team much more accessible with over the air, and with if you have an Amazon Prime subscription, you just get to stream the games if you're in the Pacific Northwest. These are things that will be integrated with some sort of Sonics Kraken umbrella strategy. I think they will learn from the sins of the past and make this a lot more accessible to things. And then the third is the expansion fee, $7 to $10 billion per team. I don't know what the finances are for Samantha Holloway. I know that they've been planning on this for a decade at this point, and that they've had their ducks in a row, and they've been getting their ducks in a row, and they're very smart and they're very savvy, and they've been following this very closely. And I know that it seems like it's all go and full speed ahead, but I did some math, and $7 to $10 billion is a lot of money. The leadership team's ability to navigate a $7 to $10 billion purchase price, that's really ambitious. And I just talked about how the Kraken have never been shy about spending money. But does this create a situation where they just don't have the cash flow to do some of the things that they want to do? Or maybe they don't hand out that signing bonus money, assuming, let's say, the millionaire tax gets struck down in the state Supreme Court, and now that doesn't exist. And now you're back to where we were last offseason. Does only handing out 9% in signing bonuses become a necessity because they don't have the cash flow? I don't think so. I don't think that the expansion fee will affect the day-to-day operations of the Kraken. I think that they have planned for this, and they have the operating budget for it, and it will be full speed ahead. But just something to think about, something to consider as this is happening. Coming up next, we have part 2 of our interview with Ladies Talking Leafs. I really enjoyed this one. It was really interesting to get perspective of what it is like in Toronto versus Seattle, because they are such different media markets, especially as it comes to hockey. And it was a good conversation. I really like those ladies talking Leafs and hockey, and I think you will too. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house, it's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action, so when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but I never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge, and now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer a spectator. Play by play. You decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involve significant risk and it's not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. What is it like being a player in Toronto? I think that there is, because hockey is so new here, or the NHL is so new here, that fans, we have a sense that it is a bigger deal in Toronto for sure. Whereas the Kraken are not one of the first teams that anyone thinks about here yet. And so Bobby McMann going from the Toronto media market, where there is all of this pressure, and then coming to Seattle, I find a really interesting angle. And I want to understand better what is that high pressure environment that he's leaving, coming to the pillowy, soft media environment of Seattle, where no one's going to bother him at the grocery store.
Well, I mean, I think first of all, that is a little bit of a fallacy. That's like such an overblown media and other NHL market story and narrative. 100%. Okay. Yes. The volume of attention for sure is higher. Are they like roasted at the stake every day and pressured to answer things? Not that much. Like it's not like the media has like, an open pass to go in and talk to whoever. They are basically fed certain people at certain times. To me, that's not really pressure. You're going to be told, who is going to want to speak to you that day. They're asking you, is it okay if you speak to this person today? So it's, and they are not, given really difficult things to answer. Like sometimes when the stakes are high, like in the playoffs, or if it's a bigger event, then you might get, extra media that are not necessarily the usual beat guys from, more mainstream news and stuff. They come in and they kind of ask some questions that maybe are annoying. But to me, mostly it's the volume and the fact that you do get asked, the players get asked the questions kind of over and over, the same sorts of things. And especially when we're in a situation like now where things are not going well, the timbre of that seems a lot greater. But you know what? I think it also is player dependent. Some players are going to relish the spotlight. Look at what William Nylander is doing. He's like, leaning into that. He's added a YouTube channel and all of that kind of thing. But some players are probably not going to like the attention as much. And so, yeah, like, is it going to be relaxing maybe to, not have to answer that many questions? But if you look at how often Bobby McMann is, traipsed in front of the media, it's not that often. He hasn't had to have that responsibility here. So is it going to make a huge difference for him? I don't really think so. And when players are kind of met in the great outdoors, so to speak, of downtown Toronto, it's not like they're accosted by fans berating them. It's more like they want to talk to them, want to have a picture with them, want to have an autograph, and that's positive attention. So to me, I think it is overblown. Often it's players from other markets that want to stir up the crap, So I don't really think that if you're a player who doesn't play here, you've got no business commenting on it. Personally, is what I feel. Yeah. Is that enough for you?
Yeah. I think that covers the landscape. But so there's much wringing of hands here in Seattle, Chris, Sil, because the Kraken are in danger of missing the playoffs for the fourth of their 5 seasons. But I'm sure as Leafs observers, you would say, hold my Molson.
Yeah, go ahead, Sil.
Well, I mean, okay, so we've been fans of this franchise, the Leafs, for a long time. So we've seen our fair share of, bad times, like hello 80s. And yeah, right now, we shouldn't be complaining too much because we had the record, the Leafs have the record for, the longest playoff stretch for the last 9 years, and it looks like it's going to end at that. So, I mean, I think it is a little different for Seattle because they are a new franchise and, you want to make sure that you are growing that fan base. And the best way to do that is to win and build community by everybody kind of, joining together and glomming onto, a stretch run and a playoff run because it's exciting. That's really how you build your community, right? Everyone kind of gets into it and it's exciting and it's fun. So I think that's where some of the nervousness probably comes from too, because they just haven't had that opportunity yet. But I can tell you, from, our before we got Austin Matthews, for example, we had a stretch of not great runs there. And, that year that we had got him and he was playing for the first time, 2016, him and Mitch Marner together there, and Willie Nylander coming up from the Marlies. There was a lot of good young players basically making the playoffs for the first time, and it wasn't even expected, and that was super, super exciting and gave our fan base a lot of hope and for our future. And looking back, it's important, I think, for us going through what we're going through as a fan base right now too, to remember that feeling, because appreciate it and be grateful, because we've had some really good teams for the past 9 years and that were a lot of fun to watch. So yeah, I'm rooting for Seattle, especially because it'd be nice for Bobby to get in and show what he can really do in the playoffs, because for the last 2 years, one of them, he was injured. Last year was really the first year that he kind of had a chance to perform in the playoffs. It kind of was a little bit hit or miss. I think he was a little bit, like deer in headlights a little bit with that one. But so this could be a year where he's had some experience and can really maybe make a difference. So we're hoping that the Kraken community and fan base gets to experience that sooner than later.
Just be easy on him. It's his first, obviously this is the first year first team that he's changing, right? He's always been with the Leafs organization. And we saw that last year with Scott Laughton, who's moved on from the Leafs now to the LA Kings, but he came from Philadelphia. For 10 seasons he played there. It was a longer time, obviously. But the Leafs being his second team, I guess, moving to. So take some time to adjust to a new team. Let's just say that. And the West Coast, the Western Conference, obviously, it's totally different. So,
well, we were a nice landing spot for former Leaf Jared McCann, and now we'll be a nice landing spot for Bobby McMann.
Don't remind us about that.
1 week, no games. For Jared. From the guys talking Kraken to the ladies talking Leafs, many thanks for your insights. This was a lot of fun. Check out their podcast. I guarantee you'll learn something and get a smile too. Chris, Sil, thank you so much.
Thanks, Glenn and Zaiem. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to Locked on Kraken. We will be back tomorrow to talk more Kraken and hopefully a big win over the Tampa Bay Lightning. Make sure you subscribe and follow Locked on Kraken so you get all the latest episodes. You can find us at Davy Jones LR on all social media platforms or at DavyJonesLockerRoom.com, where we do print coverage of the Seattle Torrent and the Seattle Kraken. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked on Kraken ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. For those of you on video, we send you over to the first ever 24/7 national Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure this is one of your 2 daily listens. For Davy Jones Locker Room, I'm Zaiem Beg, and we will see you tomorrow.